sharks we fear today are nothing compared to what came before them. Go back a few million years, and sharks weren't just predators. They were monsters, ancient giants that ruled the oceans with unmatched brutality. Some were longer than buses, with teeth the size of human hands. Others hunted in packs, striking with unbelievable speed. The seas were a battlefield, and anything that entered their domain, whales, giant turtles, even other sharks, risked becoming nothing more than shredded remains. The further you go back, the wilder, darker, and far more dangerous the ocean gets. Evolution was unforgiving, and only the fiercest creatures survived. Sharks didn't just dominate, they controlled the waters. Join us as we dive back in time to uncover some of the most fierce sharks to have ever lived. Most people look at today's sharks, great whites, tigers, hammerheads, and assume they represent the height of oceanic evolution. They move like engineered missiles, their senses are finely tuned, and their bite mechanics look near perfect. But in the larger timeline of shark history, the predators swimming today are actually the smallest and most conservative versions of their lineage. They survive in oceans that are more crowded, more competitive, and more depleted than ever before. Modern sharks have evolved not for overwhelming dominance, but shaped by the pressures of a world where prey is harder to find, and energy must be conserved with precision. But go back just a few million years, and the ocean begins to look very different. Modern sharks suddenly feel modest when compared with the giants that once patrolled the seas. The great white, a 6-meter powerhouse, once shared the planet with predators 3 times its size. These older species lived in oceans rich with whales, giant turtles, and massive fish. Food wasn't scarce, it was abundant. And when resources are abundant, evolution rewards size, power, and extremes. Prehistoric sharks didn't need to be efficient, they needed to be overwhelming. They evolved massive jaws, thick armor-like skin, and hunting strategies that look almost alien compared to the sleek, conservative designs we see today. Rewind the timeline even further, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of years, and sharks no longer resemble the streamlined forms we think of. They become experimental creatures, armored tanks, wide-jawed monsters, and predators that push the limits of what a fish could be. Some had saw-blade mouths, some had crushing plates instead of teeth, and some grew to lengths that dwarf every modern species. Modern sharks, for all their fearsome reputation, are just the quiet survivors of a lineage that once ruled with overwhelming force. The further back you go, the deadlier, stranger, and more unstoppable sharks become. Not because evolution was kinder, but because the ancient ocean allowed them to be. About 20 million years ago, the oceans were not ruled by anything resembling the sharks we know today. They were ruled by a single apex predator, so massive and so overpowering that even whales lived in its shadow. The megalodon. The megalodon wasn't just a scaled-up version of a modern shark. It was a completely different class of animal. At nearly 20 meters long, with teeth the size of human hands and a bite force strong enough to crush the bones of a whale, this creature operated on a scale no predator has matched since. Megalodon didn't hunt fish, squids, or seals. It hunted whales, and it did so with an efficiency that made the Miocene seas a constant battleground. The reason sharks grew so enormous during this era comes down to the conditions of the Miocene itself. The world was warmer, sea levels were higher, and the oceans were overflowing with early whales, species that were slower, smaller, and far less agile than modern ones. Food wasn't just abundant, it was everywhere. When the ocean provides that much energy, evolution responds by building giants. Megalodon rose to take advantage of this bounty, becoming the apex of apex predators, a hunter so dominant that it shaped the behavior and evolution of entire whale lineages. But what's most astonishing is that Megalodon wasn't the starting point of a shark gigantism. It was simply the most famous chapter. Before it, and long after it, sharks experimented with forms and strategies far stranger and deadlier than anything alive today. The Miocene was the peak of giant shark supremacy, but it wasn't the beginning of the story. The deeper you go into prehistory, the more extreme these predators become. Travel back 70 to 100 million years, and the oceans become almost unrecognizable. This was the age when sharks were not yet the undisputed tyrants of the sea. They were rising contenders, evolving rapidly in a world dominated by giant marine reptiles like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs. In this intense environment, sharks didn't shrink or retreat. They adapted, sharpened, and accelerated. One species in particular emerged as a symbol of this evolutionary arms race: Cretoxerhyna, the Ginsu shark. Bigger than today's great white and far faster, it carved through the water with rows of razor-edged teeth designed not to crush, but to slice through flesh like blades. Unlike many ancient sharks that relied on short bursts or ambush tactics, Cretoxerhyna was built for pursuit. It chased, it cornered, and it dismantled prey in open water, including young mosasaurs, sea turtles, and anything else unlucky enough to drift into its path. What made sharks so deadly in this era was the combination of opportunity and competition. Prey animals were massive and abundant, offering energy-rich targets that fueled the evolution of predators capable of high-speed brutality. The seas were warm, ecosystems were booming, and nothing restricted their development. No overfishing, no collapsing food chains, no human pressure shrinking populations or forcing specialization. These oceans rewarded size, rewarded aggression, rewarded anything that could deliver the fastest kill. In a world like that, sharks didn't just grow stronger, they evolved with ruthless efficiency. And as powerful as Cretoxerhyna was, it represents only the beginning of how strange and formidable ancient sharks could become. Because if you go deeper into prehistory past the age of sea reptiles, past the warm seas of the Cretaceous, you find sharks that look nothing like today's predators. Creatures with spiral jaws, armor-plated bodies, and feeding strategies so bizarre they seem fictional. The further back you travel, the more alien sharks become, revealing a lineage shaped by constant reinvention at the edge of survival. Around 180 to 250 million years ago, sharks entered one of the strangest evolutionary periods in their history. The oceans were still recovering from multiple mass extinctions, and every collapse created empty niches waiting to be claimed. Instead of evolving in a straight line, sharks branched out into odd, aggressive forms, each one an experiment shaped by chaos rather than stability. These weren't the hunters we know today, but prototypes built for oceans that were constantly resetting. In this era, you find sharks that look like they came from science fiction sketches. Hybidus developed two types of teeth, crushers in the back, spears in the front, so it could handle anything the recovering seas offered. Stethocanthus carried a flat, spiked anvil on its back, a structure so strange we still don't fully understand its purpose. And Helicoprion pushed the limits further, with a jaw curled into a spiral blade that rotated inward when it bit, slicing prey in a way nothing else on Earth could match. These sharks weren't deadlier because they were enormous. They were deadlier because evolution had no rules. As marine life collapsed and reformed again and again, sharks filled every vacancy with bold, experimental designs. They thrived in a world built on instability. But to find the most dangerous sharks of all, you have to go back even further, into the deep past where the first true apex monsters emerged. 385 million years ago, sharks didn't look sleek or modern. They looked like armored submarines moving through hostile prehistoric seas. Early hunters like Cladocilach were fast, streamlined missiles built purely for killing, but even they lived in constant danger. The Devonian wasn't ruled by gentle giants. It was packed with colossal plated predators like the rivals of Dunkleosteus, animals so heavily armored that sharks had to become faster, smarter, and more vicious just to keep up. The era's true monster was Ketanacanthus, a massive early shark lined with brutal spines and reinforced fins. This wasn't a quiet ambush hunter. It was a close-range brawler designed to smash into prey and survive the violent counterstrikes that defined the Devonian food chain. Its body was a weapon, its defenses were weapons, and even its swimming style suggested a creature built for raw power over elegance. In oceans where almost everything could injure or kill you, simply catching a meal was a deadly gamble. The Devonian world was an evolutionary battlefield, a time when nature hadn't settled into balance but was still experimenting with extreme designs. Every creature was armored, spiked, oversized, or unbelievably strong, and survival meant out-evolving whatever horror lived around the corner. There were no safe zones, no stable ecosystems, and no weak prey. Sharks didn't become deadly by choice. They were forged by a world far more violent than anything alive today. The deeper you go into the past, the deadlier sharks become. And it's not just about size. Ancient oceans were home to massive prey, giant fish, enormous reptiles, and early whales. To survive and thrive, sharks evolved colossal bodies, bone-crushing jaws, and teeth built to slice through armor and flesh alike. Every meal demanded power, and evolution delivered it in spades. Sharks also faced far fewer competitors than today. Without modern marine mammals or humans in the picture, these predators often ruled their territories uncontested. That lack of competition meant there were no limits on how far evolution could push them. Bigger, stronger, faster, and more specialized designs flourished, turning the seas into a landscape dominated by apex hunters unlike anything we see now. Finally, ancient oceans were chaotic and unpredictable. Mass extinctions repeatedly wiped out ecosystems, and after each collapse, sharks reinvented themselves as the ultimate survivors. There was no overfishing, no human interference, and food was abundant for those bold enough to hunt it. Combine giant prey, minimal competition, constant ecosystem resets, and untouched oceans, and you get predators that were evolution unleashed, relentless, terrifying, and far deadlier than the sharks swimming today. Sharks have survived 5 mass extinctions. They've outlived dinosaurs, super crocodiles, giant whales, and every ocean monster you can imagine. And the deeper you travel into their past, the more terrifying they become. But here's the twist. The fact that today's sharks are smaller and less deadly isn't weakness, it's evolution's victory. Because the real apex predator isn't the biggest or the fiercest, it's the one that survives.